Welcome, everybody. This is CertaPay's Coffee Break number 4, and today we're talking about remote hiring in a remote world. So the actual hiring process needs to be a remote function. So that's going to be our topic today. And I am drinking a Dharma espresso made as an Americana. It is delicious. I hope you all have a delicious coffee this morning. I am Rachel Camella, your host. I am here with Janet Lang and Cindy Merkel from our HR consulting team here at CertaPay. So we're so glad you're here to join us today, and let's talk about the remote workforce. Okay, so I want to remind everybody again, if you have questions, you can use that Zoom group chat. Cindy's going to keep an eye on it, and we'll answer your questions as we go along, and let us know what your thoughts are. All right, so why are we talking about this in the first place? Well, obviously, because we're in a pandemic, so things have changed. And as I said, we were moving in a direction of having a 50% remote workforce as it was. We were headed here, and the projections were about 2025. But this pushed us there really quickly. And so now that we're already here, I don't think we're going to go back. We're going to keep the majority of the people who are working remotely are going to continue to work remotely. And some of the reasons are because people are going to be healthier. We're saving a lot of money. We've got increased productivity. Things are getting done really well. And so when we talk about our hiring practices, there's a couple things. Number one, we're hiring for remote positions. And number two, we're hiring in a remote format. So a lot of these things have come up here. I'm going to just go ahead and remind people to mute yourselves. We have a little bit of noise in the background, but if we keep yourselves muted, we'll be good. And then if you have to ask a question, feel free to unmute or type it in the chat box. Okay, so doing your remote process, doing your hiring process in a remote way can actually increase your pace of the hiring process. And one of the things we found is that in the hiring process, we lose people to the pace going too slowly. So having a remote process in place speeds up your pace, and then you are more likely to get that candidate that you really wanted. Technology is another reason we're doing this. It's because we can. So we've got all this great technology in place, so it makes our remote process easier. We wouldn't have necessarily been able to do it this way 15 or 20 years ago. This also expands your options. When we do a remote format, we have lots of choices across the country. We're not limited to our local area. We can search for people all over the country. If the position itself is remote, you now have a lot of candidates to choose from. And finally, why are we doing this? Because of the cost savings. So there are a lot of pieces, and a lot of it has to do with the time savings. So when you take all of these pieces and you put them together and you associate time with it, you have huge savings in terms of time, which directly translates to financial savings and a terrific financial impact. All right, so let's take a quick look here. We see 5 steps in the hiring process. So a lot of people can put it in different ways. Within each of these steps, there are probably about 5 steps. So this is a several step process, but when we kind of bundle it together, we've got these 5 steps. We talk about creating the need or understanding your company's need for the particular position that you're hiring for. Job descriptions. In each of our previous remote webinars, we talk about job descriptions, and pretty much when we're talking about anything HR, we're going to say how important job descriptions are. And during the hiring process, they're critical. You can't talk about a position for which you're looking to fill if you don't have an understanding of the requirements. So a job description is a very, very important part. Where are you posting? How are you posting? Posting format. This is another important part of the process. The actual interview process, which can be broken down into many steps on its own, but it's a very important step in this process. And then finally, the offer process. And I call it an offer process because within that, we've got a contingent offer, a discussion about the salary part. Are you doing additional pieces during that? Background check, reference checks, drug screening, all these different pieces that go in that offer process. So now we're going to dig in. Let's put the first two together. We're going to talk about your need and the job descriptions at the same time because they do kind of go together. And right now you may have made some changes. So you want to really look at what positions are open. Do you need to consolidate those? Do you need to expand those from 2 to 3 positions or from 3 to 2 positions? What does that look like? What is the exact need? So you want to kind of start almost at the end. What do you want to happen? What does it look like at the end? And then go backwards from there and say, okay, these are the tasks that need to happen within these positions.
I couldn't get onto this and I had
and we've got somebody who needs to mute. Let's see, maybe I can help. I think we're good. Okay. So then within that process, you're going to describe your job tasks and the responsibilities. These pieces of the job description are very, very important. You want to completely understand all of the pieces of the actual job and what you need it to look like. And then within that, you want to talk about the extra things now in the world of COVID-19. Do you want to add specific safety measures to the job description? What PPE is necessary in this particular job? What does that look like in terms of safety requirements for the particular job? And then again, you want to include in the job description, what is the review process going to look like? What are the benchmarks? What is the evaluation going to look like? Make sure you have all of these different pieces in place so that it's a very clear process. This is an important step. And when we talk about all of these steps, you want to spend a lot of time planning and preparing before you even start searching. And that's where you're going to put your energy. Plan and prepare, understand what your need is, create the job descriptions that make sense. And it's okay to redo job descriptions routinely. So maybe you need to add some things right now. Take a look at your job descriptions and see if they match where we are in the world right now. How are we doing? Is everybody good?
We're good. Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay. So next, we've got our posting is our third step in the process. And this is where we want to talk about technology. Technology is critical. We have so many different ways to reach out to the potential hiring people and all of the potential candidates that you have. So use everything that you can. There are some fantastic applicant trackers out there. CertaPay has a wonderful product that we blend with our payroll. There are some great ways to create an applicant tracking process that will save you money, save you time, save you aggravation, and it will actually do some of the narrowing down for you. So don't be afraid to use any technology that you can. When we have an applicant tracking process in place, you can add the questions right in there that help narrow it down. Like, let's say, for example, that one of the requirements is you must have a 4-year degree. Well, you can put that into your applicant tracking process so that it's a knockout. So when somebody answers the questions about education, if they do not say that they have a bachelor's degree or a 4-year degree, then that's going to be automatically eliminated for you. And then you set up the questions that are the knockouts based on your job description. This is actually your first interview. So you can set up your technology function to do all these first pieces for you. It's a wonderful feature, especially now you think about you're sending your postings across the country for positions, and you want to have some extra screening and lines of defense in place for you because you couldn't possibly get through them all. So it's a great measure to add. And then a lot of times, you'll see people that are disengaged in the process. And I've had some clients where they add text messages. So use your phone as well. Use text messaging as a piece of technology that will keep your connection between the candidates. It's a good measure to just stay connected. Don't forget to spotlight your company. Just because you're using technology doesn't mean you can't brag about how great your company is. Why is it such a great place to work? Add testimonials, add video clips about employees talking about how great of a workplace you have, or any kind of testimonials that speak to your company's culture or your mission and vision. These are important pieces to include throughout the hiring process. It's something that we see as one of the flaws. If you go through the entire hiring process and you've got somebody who appears to be a great match, but they're not a cultural fit, then that individual won't stay. So you can avoid that by including some clips about your culture and your company vision and mission. Put them in your hiring process along the way. So now we get to the interview process, and this is where we talk about planning. I put on here who, what, where, when, and how, because these are all very, very important. In the very beginning, you're trying to figure out what is the need, what does the position look like, and you create this job description. So now you have to go even bigger from there. Who's going to be involved in the process? Are you going to include the hiring manager? Are you going to include the direct supervisor for this position? Are you going to include, oftentimes we see coworkers who are involved in the process. Oftentimes a company owner will be involved in the process, the hiring manager or the HR manager. So take a look at exactly who's going to be involved in the process. Be careful not to have too many. If you have 3 or 4 people involved in the interview process, it's kind of a nice number. If you start to have more people than that, it's a little bit of too many cooks in the kitchen. But if you don't have enough, then you don't have enough viewpoints. So think about maybe 3 or 4 people involved in the process. And what are you going to do? How are you going to make that interview process look? So you've narrowed it down with your technology and your applicant tracking process. Now you're going to have some face-to-face interviews, but we can't really do face-to-face interviews anymore. So this is where you add more technology. Use not just Zoom, but there are other, OWL makes a great product. There are some other products that have video capability, and they're great for interviews because you can save the time that you would have of scheduling and meeting in person, and you just have that window of time for your interview. And that works great for the other people involved in the process as well. If you tell each of the people who will be interviewing and you do for 30 minutes or whatever the window is, you can do the schedule fast and easy and plug people into interview times, and you still get a virtual face-to-face. So you have all the layers of communication, not just something over the phone or reading a resume. So it's nice to add that visual piece to it. And then get everybody back together after you have a conversation. Get people back together and talk about what you learned. And maybe even before the interview, talk about questions. So you might ask specific questions like, tell me about your first job. You can get some great information with that question, and keep all of your questions related to your job description. Your job description is a guide to the questions you want to ask in your interviews and how you want to do that. And why did you apply to this job is also a good question, because it's open-ended. You get your applicant talking about why they've applied, why did they choose your company, why did they choose this position. And these are all good questions. And you can even have each of the interviewers ask the same questions, because they may get some different answers. So when you bring everybody back together to have a conversation about it, you can say, hey, I asked the question of, tell me about a project you worked on that didn't work. What did you do? Or tell me about an idea you had that didn't work. And you might get some different answers between all of the interviewers, which will give you guys some good insight into the candidate. Is this the right person? Do they have some good thought behind their answers? One thing that is kind of a new process we've seen is very specific benchmarking or scorecards for the interview process, so that you would have values added to certain questions that are asked. And maybe you have a value added to the education level, or the technology understanding, or different components to the job description. And so that's a good way, if you create a scorecard, then when all of you get back together, you can discuss each of your scorecards at the end of that and see where this candidate falls. So some great practices in the interview process can really help you along the way. Then we get to the offer. You want to once you get to the exact right person, they match everything, they've got a high benchmark, everybody agrees it's a great person, culture match, everything. Give them a contingent offer before you start to dig deeper. You want to give that contingent offer and then do the background check after that. Background checks are an important piece of the process. It will help you get information that that may be useful to your decision making, but you want to make that contingent offer first. And same thing with your pre-employment drug screening and those pieces. Give that contingent offer and then complete your process after that. A lot of people ask us about testing and what our thought is about different aptitude tests and skills tests, and they can be a great piece of the interviewing process. And we would also like to caution, whatever testing you do needs to be directly connected to the position itself and to the job description you have. So you don't want to do some kind of testing that doesn't really have anything to do with the job. You want to be able to connect them directly and have, you know, that's a waste of time on your end. It's a waste of funds unless it's directly connected. Then it makes sense. So be careful about how you use any kind of pre-employment testing or screening like that. Make sure it's connected to the actual job. And that should be clear. So once you do that, then also have some clear communication about the starting path. Have the conversation about the job description, exactly what the expectations are, the pay platform, what that salary structure is going to look like, an actual start date, how the first week will look, how the first month will look, what the training schedule is, what the review and performance review schedule will look like. These are all important things to discuss during that offer process. We see a lot of people lose their candidates in this window because of a couple things I mentioned, the time it takes to go through the process. The pace is a very dangerous thing. If the pace slows down, you have a huge chance of losing your candidate. So keep the communication open. I mentioned the technology piece. Text messages to your candidate throughout the process about where they are in the process, what's left, what the expected time frame is. Those are great ways to keep your candidates engaged. And then when you get to this process, be clear about it. Make sure there's no gray area so that when they start, it makes sense. And we're going to definitely continue this remote discussion because the next step is the onboarding process. And if you've got remote employees, then keeping them engaged, especially in the beginning, is very, very important. And so we're going to continue the discussion as we go in one of our future coffee chats. But for now, that's kind of all of those steps in a nutshell. I want to take a quick look at some of the common things that we see at CertaPay as issues during the hiring process. And one of them, as I've already stressed, is failing to prepare properly. Spend some time on it. Have a standard operating procedure in place so that anyone involved in the hiring process understands exactly what your company's process is. Again, something that we're very familiar with. We can help you write these processes. If you need help with it, don't hesitate to reach out to us. This is one of our strengths. And be prepared for your interview process. It will help the process go more smoothly, and you will get better candidates, and you will have great employees that stay. And that's the goal in the end. Don't be resistant to technology. It's 2020. We have great technology available to us now, and we have great programs and platforms, like I mentioned, applicant tracking systems. There are many out there that are just fantastic. Use them and use them to your advantage. Don't be afraid of that. Don't cast too narrow of a net. We can throw the net across the country now. You have candidates all over who could be a potential match. So casting too narrow of a net can limit the candidates you have to choose from. So don't be afraid to go big there. Don't forget to highlight your company culture. As I said, this is a big one because you can have all of the perfect match on paper and then have somebody that doesn't match your company's culture or your company's vision. These are important pieces. So add it all the way through the process. Put it in your, post it somehow, a little clip of it in your ad, in your posting for the position. Talk about it, add video clips, add testimonials. Highlighting your company culture is an important part of the process. Do some listening. The more talking you do, the less talking your candidate does. So throw out your open-ended questions and then listen for all the details. You will get all the information you need if you allow them to talk. If you get them talking, you're going to learn the most. And I'm not saying don't talk at all. You need to talk. You need to talk about your culture. You need to talk about the job description, about the position, how it looks. You do need to do those pieces, but do a lot of listening as much as you can. Don't forget to do that background check. That is an important piece. We have seen some issues where people do their own Google search or Facebook searching. You know, be careful about doing those on your own. Let the professionals help you with this piece. If you have a company that does background checks, they're going to be federally regulated. They're going to file the paperwork appropriately. They're going to maintain the correct information, and they're going to provide you with the correct information. So do the background checks, but do them in an official format. Don't be afraid to spend $30, $40, $50 on a background check. It will pay for itself in the end, and it's a mistake you don't want to make. How are we doing? Any questions this morning?
Rachel, that screen needs to be fixed. There you go. I wanted to mention something. I wanted to reiterate something that Rachel said when it came to the technology and the use of text messages and things with your candidates. That not only helps you, that helps set their mind at ease, that they're making the right decision, that they're going down the path to be with an employer that they want to be a part of. When they start seeing testimonials and things, if I'm in Oregon and I'm going to work in Florida, by seeing those, it brings me to Florida. I'm not in Oregon anymore. I'm now with the company in Florida. And I really think that that not only helps you as an employer find the right candidate, it's just important that the employee is happy with us as we are with them.
Absolutely. That's a perfect point, because that's exactly what we're talking about. You know, the more communication you have with your candidates along the way, the better the beginning is. And if you start them off on the right foot, they're going to stay. I mean, we all know, we've talked about it, turnover can be as much as 300% of that individual's salary. So if you spend all this time on the front, you get them trained, they're with you for 6 months, and then all of a sudden they feel like, this is not a good match for me, you lose that person, you lose a lot of money. All of the people involved in the process, all of the time involved in the process, that's all added up to the turnover loss in that process, and now you have to start over and do it again. So when you spend that extra time and communicate with your candidates and make it a process that makes sense for them, they feel better, and then they want to be with you and they want to stay, and that's the goal. So takeaways for this morning. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have any questions in the chat box. Just two things. One, you're more than welcome to open up yourself, unmute yourself and speak. Also, if anyone would like a copy of this, if you would please put your email address in the chat box, I will ensure once this is over that you get a copy.
And I would like to encourage you all to please go to CertaPay's website. We've got a lot of webinars on our website, so you can get some more information there. If you need any other help with anything related to your people, that's what we do. We help you with solutions. We can solve your human capital problems. We can help you with payroll and work comp and HR and all of these pieces. So please remember, we are here for you. We know these are crazy times, and any questions or issues you might have, reach out to us. We are here to help you out. So takeaways for today are, don't forget to prepare on the front. Understand what your need is, create job descriptions that make sense, and put a little thought and time into your posting and the posting process. Have some fun with your interview process, include people that make sense, follow a procedure, and then spend some time on the offer process doing a contingent offer. So I hope you guys got a lot out of this today, and we look forward to working with all of you in the future, and we wish you the best, and we look forward to hearing from you next week. Next week's topic will be the FSCRA and unemployment questions and issues that you might have. It's going to be more of a Q&A for next week for issues that might be going on now that we've gotten through the initial phase of FSCRA and time off processing and also unemployment. You might have some questions about how to maneuver through it at this point. So join us next week and keep an eye on all of our coffee break topics every Thursday at 11:30 Eastern time. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you all.